My name is Isolde Harrington, and I still hear their laughter echoing in the darkest corners of my mind. The sound cuts through me like shattered glass, even now, 12 years later, as I sit in my corner office overlooking the city skyline. But today, that laughter would finally be silenced forever. I was 21 when my world collapsed in that pristine glass office of Isolde Footwear. 21, naive, and clutching my portfolio of shoe sketches like they were my last breath of hope. My hands trembled as I sat in that sterile waiting room, surrounded by marble floors and crystal chandeliers that screamed wealth and exclusivity. The receptionist's name was Vivian Cross. I would never forget her face, her perfectly manicured nails, or the way her cold blue eyes traveled down my body, like I was something distasteful she had found stuck to her designer heel. When her gaze landed on my feet, time seemed to freeze. My shoes were leather flats, once black but now faded to a dull charcoal. The left sole had split completely, creating a gap that flapped with every step I took. The right heel was worn down to an angle that made me walk with a slight limp. These shoes had carried me through 2 part-time jobs, countless interviews, and sleepless nights spent perfecting my designs. "You want to design shoes," Vivian said, her voice dripping with disdain. "But you cannot even afford a decent pair yourself?" The words hit me like physical blows. My cheeks burned with humiliation as other people in the waiting room turned to stare. A security guard smirked from his position by the elevator. Even the cleaning lady paused her work to look at the pathetic girl with the broken shoes. But the real devastation came when the hiring manager, Magnus Blackwell, emerged from his office. He was everything I was not. Impeccably dressed in a $1,000 suit, Italian leather shoes that probably cost more than my rent, and an expression of barely contained amusement. "Is this our aspiring designer?" he asked Vivian, and they both burst into laughter that felt like knives twisting in my chest. Magnus did not look at my sketches. He did not ask me a single question about my vision, my passion, or my dreams. Instead, he pointed at my feet and said, "We cannot have someone representing our brand who looks like they shop at thrift stores. This is Isolde Footwear, not a charity case." The laughter grew louder. Other employees gathered, drawn by the spectacle of my humiliation. I felt like an animal in a zoo, trapped behind invisible bars while people pointed and mocked my misery. I stood up on shaking legs, my broken sole making an embarrassing slapping sound against the marble floor. Every step I took toward the exit amplified their cruel laughter, following me like a curse I could not escape. Outside on the busy street, I finally allowed the tears to fall. The city moved around me in a blur of expensive cars and well-dressed professionals, all of whom seemed to belong to a world that had just slammed its door in my face. But what those people at Isolde Footwear did not know was that those broken shoes had a story. They had walked me through my first job at a coffee shop, where I worked 16-hour shifts to pay for design school. They had carried me through my second job at a call center, where I answered complaints all day and sketched shoe designs during my breaks. They had supported me through countless rejections, through nights when I ate ramen noodles for dinner, so I could afford art supplies, through moments when I questioned whether my dreams were worth the struggle. Those shoes were not just footwear. They were symbols of my determination, my refusal to give up, and my willingness to sacrifice everything for the chance to create something beautiful. I walked home that day with my head down, but my spirit was far from broken. If anything, the humiliation had ignited something fierce and unrelenting inside me. I would show them. I would show them all. I started in my basement apartment, surrounded by second-hand equipment and dreams that felt too big for the cramped space. I bought broken heels from thrift stores and garage sales, studying their construction, learning how they were made, discovering why they failed. My first creations were rough, amateur attempts at rebuilding discarded shoes. But with each repair, each modification, each small improvement, I was teaching myself the craft that Isolde Footwear claimed I was not qualified to learn. The breakthrough came when I redesigned a pair of damaged stilettos I had found in a dumpster behind an expensive boutique. The original design was beautiful but completely impractical. The heel was too thin, the arch support non-existent, the materials cheap despite the high price tag. I rebuilt those shoes from the ground up. I reinforced the heel with a steel core, added memory foam padding to the sole, and used genuine leather that would actually improve with age. When I was finished, they were not just beautiful, they were functional, comfortable, and built to last. I posted pictures of the transformation on social media, never expecting more than a few likes from friends. Instead, the post went viral overnight. Women began commenting about their own experiences with beautiful but painful shoes, sharing stories of bleeding feet and ruined evenings caused by footwear that prioritized appearance over comfort. Orders started trickling in, then flowing, then flooding. I quit both my part-time jobs and threw myself into what would become Harrington Steps. My basement became a workshop. My kitchen table became an office. My entire life became consumed with the mission of creating shoes that could be both stunning and practical. The early days were brutal. I worked 18-hour days, sleeping only when exhaustion forced me to collapse on my couch. My hands became permanently stained with leather dye. My back ached from hunching over my workbench. My eyes burned from straining to see intricate details under inadequate lighting. But every completed pair felt like a small victory. Every satisfied customer felt like validation. Every 5-star review felt like proof that I was on the right path. I started selling at street markets and craft fairs, setting up my little booth between jewelry makers and artists. People would stop, try on my shoes, and gasp when they realized how comfortable they were. Women would walk across the entire market in my heels, testing them, pushing them to their limits. "These are the most comfortable heels I have ever worn," became a phrase I heard so often it should have been printed on business cards. Word spread organically. Fashion bloggers started featuring my designs. Instagram influencers began posting pictures of themselves in Harrington Steps shoes. Magazine editors started calling, asking for samples to feature in upcoming issues. Meanwhile, I never stopped thinking about Arden Footwear. I followed their company obsessively, tracking their sales, monitoring their social media, studying their designs. They continued to produce the same overpriced, uncomfortable shoes that had made them successful decades earlier, seemingly unaware that the market was changing around them. Their customer reviews began to shift. Words like outdated, uncomfortable, and overpriced appeared with increasing frequency. Younger consumers were gravitating toward brands that offered both style and substance, leaving traditional luxury footwear companies struggling to remain relevant. The first time I saw my shoes in a high-end department store, I cried right there in the aisle. It was a pair of burgundy ankle boots with silver hardware, displayed in the same section where Arden Footwear products had once reigned supreme. The price tag read $400, more money than I had ever imagined charging for a single pair of shoes. But women were buying them. They were buying them faster than I could produce them. I hired my first employee, then my second, then my third. My basement workshop moved to a small factory space. The small factory space expanded into a larger facility. The larger facility grew into multiple locations across 3 states. Harrington Steps became synonymous with a new philosophy in footwear. The radical idea that women should not have to choose between looking beautiful and feeling comfortable. Every design went through rigorous testing. Every material was selected for durability as well as aesthetics. Every shoe was built to carry women through their real lives, not just their special occasions. The growth was intoxicating, but I never forgot where I came from. I never forgot the sound of that laughter, or the feeling of walking out of Arden Footwear with my dreams in shambles and my soul flapping against the pavement. 5 years after starting Harrington Steps, I attended my first major trade show as an established brand. The International Footwear Expo was the most important event in our industry, where brands unveiled their upcoming collections and buyers placed orders for the following season. I walked into that convention center wearing my own creation. A pair of black pumps with a revolutionary heel design that distributed weight evenly across the foot. They were elegant enough for a boardroom meeting and comfortable enough for a marathon shopping trip. My booth was modest compared to some of the industry giants, but it was positioned strategically between 2 major competitors. I had worked for months preparing for this moment, creating a collection that would establish Harrington Steps as a serious player in the luxury footwear market. Then I saw them. The Arden Footwear booth was massive, occupying prime real estate in the center of the convention floor. Their display was all white marble and gold accents, designed to evoke classic luxury and timeless elegance. Models posed in their latest designs, looking beautiful but slightly uncomfortable as they shifted their weight from foot to foot. Magnus Blackwell was there, older now but still radiating the same arrogant confidence that had crushed my spirit 6 years earlier. He moved through the booth like a king surveying his domain, shaking hands with buyers and schmoozing with industry veterans. I watched from a distance as potential customers examined Arden's new collection. The designs were virtually identical to what they had been producing for decades. The same silhouettes, the same materials, the same priorities that favored appearance over functionality. But something was different. The crowds around their booth seemed smaller than in previous years. The energy felt flat, uninspired. Buyers picked up shoes, examined them briefly, and moved on without placing orders. When it came time for the official presentations, I watched Arden's showcase with fascination and growing confidence. Their models strutted down the runway in shoes that were undeniably beautiful, but clearly causing them discomfort. I could see the strain in their faces, the careful way they placed each step to avoid stumbling. The audience response was polite but lukewarm. There was scattered applause, a few nods of approval from longtime customers, but nothing approaching enthusiasm or excitement. Then came my turn. I had choreographed every moment of my presentation with military precision. My models were not just beautiful, they were athletes, dancers, women who could showcase the true capabilities of my designs. They did not just walk down the runway. They moved with confidence and power, demonstrating that beauty and strength were not mutually exclusive. My lead model wore a pair of 6-inch stilettos that I had spent months perfecting. She did not just strut. She ran, jumped, and even performed a brief dance routine, all while maintaining perfect balance and obvious comfort. The audience gasped. Then they began to cheer. By the time my showcase ended, there was a line of buyers at my booth that stretched halfway across the convention floor. Orders poured in so fast that I had to call my factory to increase production immediately. Fashion editors surrounded me with questions and cameras, wanting to know the story behind the revolutionary footwear brand that had just stolen the spotlight. Meanwhile, the Arden footwear booth had grown eerily quiet. Magnus Blackwell stood in the center of his marble display, watching the chaos around my space with an expression I had never seen before, uncertainty. Over the following months, the industry publications told the story in stark numbers. Harrington Steps had received more orders at that single trade show than most established brands saw in an entire year. Arden Footwear, by contrast, had experienced their worst showing in company history. The whispers started almost immediately. Fashion insiders began questioning whether traditional luxury footwear brands could adapt to changing consumer expectations. Younger customers were abandoning labels that had been prestigious for generations, choosing instead to support brands that aligned with their values and lifestyles. Arden Footwear's stock price began to decline. Their quarterly report showed decreasing sales and shrinking profit margins. Industry analysts speculated about potential restructuring, cost-cutting measures, and the possibility of a corporate sale. I followed every development with the focused intensity of a predator watching wounded prey. The final blow came 2 years later, during what would become known as the comfort revolution in footwear. A major fashion magazine published a comprehensive study comparing traditional luxury shoes with newer brands focused on comfort and functionality. The results were devastating for companies like Arden. Their shoes scored lowest in every category except brand recognition, comfort, durability, value for money, customer satisfaction. Harrington Steps, meanwhile, achieved perfect scores across multiple categories and was named Brand of the Year by the same publication that had once ignored my existence. The magazine article included a sidebar feature about companies that had failed to adapt to changing markets. Arden Footwear was prominently featured, with industry experts predicting that the company had perhaps 2 years to reinvent itself or face potential bankruptcy. That was when my lawyer, Harrison Vale, called with news that would change everything. Arden Footwear is for sale, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Their investors want out. They are asking for a fraction of what the company was worth 5 years ago. I sat in my office, looking out at the city skyline, processing this information. The company that had once seemed impossibly powerful and untouchable was now desperate for a buyer. The people who had laughed at my broken shoes were begging for someone to save them from their own failures. How much? I asked. Harrison quoted a number that was surprisingly reasonable, less than I had spent on expanding my own facilities the previous year. Arden Footwear, once valued in the hundreds of millions, was being offered for what amounted to pocket change for a successful company like mine. "Do you want me to make an offer?" Harrison asked. I did not hesitate. "Buy it. All of it. Today." The legal process moved with stunning speed. Arden's investors were so eager to cut their losses that they accepted my offer without negotiation. Within a week, I owned the company that had once crushed my dreams. But I was not finished. I had waited 12 years for this moment, and I intended to savor every second of it. I scheduled a press conference to announce the acquisition, but first, I had some personal business to attend to. I put on my favorite pair of Harrington Steps heels, the same style I had worn to that trade show where everything began to change, and walked into the Arden Footwear headquarters for the second time in my life. The lobby looked exactly the same: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, an atmosphere of manufactured elegance that now felt hollow and desperate. The same security guard was still at his post, though he was grayer now and looked tired. The same cleaning lady was still polishing surfaces that no longer gleamed with success. And behind the reception desk sat Vivian Cross. She had aged poorly. Her hair was thinner, her makeup heavier, her expression more bitter than I remembered. When she looked up and saw me approaching, there was no recognition in her eyes. I was just another visitor, another person she could dismiss or humiliate if the mood struck her. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, her voice carrying the same condescending tone that had haunted my nightmares for over a decade. I smiled. Not a friendly smile, but the kind of smile a shark might wear before attacking. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out the deed to the company, dropping it on her desk with a satisfying thud. "No," I said, watching her face as she read the legal documents. "I have ownership." The transformation was immediate and complete. Vivian's face drained of all color, her mouth falling open in shock and disbelief. Her hands trembled as she picked up the papers, scanning them desperately for some indication that this was a joke or a mistake. "This cannot be real," she whispered. "Oh, but it is," I replied. "My name is Isolde Harrington, and as of today, I own this company. I own this building. I own your job." Recognition finally dawned in her eyes, and with it came a terror so profound that I almost felt sorry for her. "Almost. You," she breathed. "You are the girl with the broken shoes." I agreed. "But those shoes walked me here." Word of my arrival spread through the building like wildfire. Employees gathered in hallways, whispering and pointing as I made my way to the executive floor. Some of them remembered me, though most had forgotten the insignificant girl they had once mocked. Magnus Blackwell was waiting in what had been his office, looking older and defeated. His expensive suit could not hide the fact that his empire had crumbled around him. His Italian leather shoes seemed ridiculous now, a costume worn by an actor who had forgotten his lines. "Miss Harrington," he said, attempting to maintain some dignity in his defeat. "I suppose congratulations are in order." "Actually," I replied, settling into the chair that had once been his, "I prefer to think of this as justice." I spent the rest of that day touring the facility, meeting with department heads, reviewing financial records. The company was in worse shape than I had imagined: outdated equipment, demoralized employees, products that nobody wanted to buy. But none of that mattered. I had not bought Arden Footwear because I wanted their business. I had bought them because I wanted their name, their history, and the satisfaction of transforming everything they represented. The press conference was held the following week in the same lobby where I had once been humiliated. Reporters and cameras filled the space, transforming it into a theater for my ultimate vindication. I stood at the podium wearing a dress I had designed myself and shoes that represented everything Arden had once claimed was impossible: beauty, comfort, and quality all in one perfect package. 12 years ago, I began, my voice carrying clearly through the packed room. I walked into this building with a portfolio full of dreams and walked out with those dreams in pieces. The people who worked here laughed at my broken shoes and told me I did not belong in their world. The cameras flashed as I paused, letting the moment build. Today, I am here to announce that Harrington Steps has acquired Arden Footwear. We will be maintaining the Arden name and their manufacturing facilities, but transforming their entire approach to creating footwear. The company that once mocked functionality will now be producing shoes that prove beauty and comfort are not mutually exclusive. A reporter raised her hand. Miss Harrington, how does it feel to buy the company that once rejected you? I smiled, thinking of that 21-year-old girl who had limped out of this building with her heart in pieces and her soul flapping against the pavement. They laughed at my broken shoes, I said, my voice filled with quiet triumph. But those shoes walked me here. They carried me through every rejection, every sleepless night, every moment when I wanted to give up. Those shoes taught me that appearances can be deceiving, that something can look broken on the surface while remaining strong at its core. The applause was thunderous. Camera flashes filled the air like lightning. And somewhere in the back of the room, I swear I heard the sound I had been waiting 12 years to experience, the beautiful, perfect silence where laughter used to be. Later that evening, alone in my new office, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a photograph I had carried with me for over a decade. It was a picture of those broken leather flats, taken the night after my disastrous interview at Arden Footwear. I had kept those shoes all these years, even after I could afford to replace them with anything I wanted. They sat in a place of honor in my closet, a reminder of where I had come from and how far I had traveled. Looking at that photograph now, I felt a sense of completion that went beyond professional success or financial triumph. This was about something deeper, about proving that worth is not determined by appearances, that dreams are stronger than ridicule, and that sometimes the people who laugh at you today will work for you tomorrow. I picked up my phone and called my assistant. Please arrange for a company-wide meeting tomorrow morning, I said. I want to meet with every employee, from the executives to the cleaning staff. It is time for them to understand how things are going to change around here. The transformation of Arden Footwear began immediately. I kept the employees who showed potential and respect, while quietly encouraging those who had participated in my original humiliation to find employment elsewhere. The company culture shifted from one of exclusion and arrogance to one of innovation and inclusivity. Within 6 months, the Arden name was associated with an entirely new philosophy. Their first collection under my ownership featured shoes that were revolutionary in their combination of style and comfort. The marketing campaign featured real women, not just models, demonstrating that beautiful footwear could enhance rather than hinder their daily lives. The response was overwhelming. Orders poured in from retailers who had written off the Arden brand as obsolete. Fashion magazines that had ignored the company for years suddenly featured their designs on covers and in major spreads. Most importantly, customers who had never considered Arden shoes before became devoted fans of the new direction. But success was not enough for me. I wanted legacy. I wanted to ensure that no other young designer would ever experience what I had endured in that marble lobby 12 years earlier. I established the Harrington Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting emerging designers from underprivileged backgrounds. We provided scholarships, mentorship programs, and startup funding for people who had talent but lacked resources or connections. Every year, we held a design competition where young artists could showcase their work regardless of their background or appearance. The winners received not just money, but access to the same industry connections and opportunities that had once been reserved for people from privileged circumstances. I made sure that every Harrington Foundation event was held in the Arden Footwear lobby, transforming that space from a place of exclusion into a celebration of inclusion and possibility. 5 years after acquiring Arden, I received an unexpected visitor. Vivian Cross, the former receptionist who had mocked my broken shoes, stood nervously in my office, looking much older and more fragile than I remembered. "Miss Harrington," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I came to apologize." I gestured for her to sit, curious about what had brought her back to the scene of her former employment. "I lost my job when you restructured the company," she continued. "I have been unable to find work elsewhere. My reputation in this industry is not good. I have had a lot of time to think about my behavior, about the things I said to you and others over the years." She paused, tears forming in her eyes. "I was wrong. I was cruel. I judged people based on things that did not matter, and I missed the opportunity to recognize real talent and determination. I understand if you cannot forgive me, but I wanted you to know that I am deeply sorry for how I treated you. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or insincerity. But all I saw was genuine remorse and the humility that comes from experiencing genuine consequences for one's actions. Vivian, I said finally, I appreciate your apology. It takes courage to admit when we have been wrong, especially when the consequences have been so severe. She nodded, wiping at her eyes. I have learned something important over the past few years, I continued. Holding on to anger and resentment only diminishes the person carrying those feelings. I have achieved everything I wanted to achieve, not despite the way you treated me, but partly because of it. Your cruelty motivated me to prove that superficial judgments are worthless. I paused, considering my next words carefully. I am not going to offer you your old job back, because that position no longer exists in the company I have built. But I am going to give you something better. A chance to learn from your mistakes and become someone who lifts others up instead of tearing them down. I offered her a position in our human resources department, working specifically with our diversity and inclusion initiatives. It was not glamorous work, and the salary was modest, but it was an opportunity for redemption that I suspect she had never expected to receive. Vivian accepted gratefully, and over the following years, she became one of our most passionate advocates for treating all applicants with dignity and respect. She worked closely with the Harrington Foundation, helping to identify promising candidates who might have been overlooked by traditional recruitment methods. Her transformation reminded me that people are capable of change, and that success is most meaningful when it creates opportunities for others to grow as well. Today, as I write this story, Harrington Steps operates in 47 countries and employs over 15,000 people. The Arden brand, under our stewardship, has become synonymous with innovation and inclusivity in footwear design. Our products are worn by everyone from corporate executives to college students, from Hollywood celebrities to single mothers working multiple jobs. But more importantly, the culture we have created values substance over appearance, merit over connections, and dreams over circumstances. I still keep those broken leather flats in my office, displayed in a place of honor where I can see them every day. They remind me that our greatest strengths often emerge from our deepest struggles, and that the people who dismiss us today might be the ones asking for our help tomorrow. Sometimes, late at night when I am working alone in my office, I think about that 21-year-old girl who walked into Arden Footwear with such hope and walked out with such devastation. I wish I could tell her that the laughter echoing behind her would not last forever, that those broken shoes would carry her to places she could never have imagined, and that someday she would transform that pain into purpose. The fashion industry is different now, partly because of the changes we have championed at Harrington Steps and Arden Footwear. Young designers are judged on their creativity and skill rather than their appearance or background. Comfort and functionality are no longer seen as compromises, but as essential elements of good design. But most importantly, the next time a young person with broken shoes and big dreams walks into a fashion company looking for their chance, they will find doors that open instead of laughter that follows them home. That, more than any financial success or industry recognition, is the legacy I am most proud of. They laughed at my broken shoes, but those shoes walked me exactly where I needed to go. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories of triumph, revenge, and transformation. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, so you never miss an inspiring tale of ordinary people achieving extraordinary things. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful stories that prove dreams are always worth fighting for.